more breaking developments coming in. This is a statement from the UK cabinet. This is Jonathan Reynolds, who's come out and made a statement that, and I quote, the UK was informed ahead of the US-Iran strike, but Britain did not receive any US request for its Diego Garcia airbase to be used in the US strikes on Iran. So Britain says that we were told that this was about to happen. We weren't given the exact timing, but we did not participate, nor were we asked for any assistance, because as you know, the Diego Garcia airbase is here in the Indian Ocean. It is generally used by NATO for refuel and resupply. But of course, if you have carrier groups operating in the Arabian Gulf, you would not need to use it at this point of time. Ambassador Deepak Vora joining us now on the broadcast. Ambassador Vora, we are processing several bits of information. Let me take the most scandalous one with you first. The Iranian media is now reporting that it was the Pakistani army chief who was playing the agent, that he met with the now assassinated Major General Bagheri on the 27th of May, planted a wristwatch with the GPS device enabled on him that allowed the Americans to track him, and then a few days later, of course, he was eliminated in an Israeli airstrike, and he was received, of course, by the Iranians with full military honors. Do you buy that this could actually be the sequence of events, given that a few days later the same Munir was sitting and having lunch in the White House?
Well, thank you very much. Always a pleasure. And I'm delighted to see that General Singh is there, Mr. Bowman is there, and of course Major General Bagheri and Mr. Mukherjee, whose knowledge is much greater than mine. So thank you. There is total credibility about what Israel is supposed to have done, given Mullah Munir a wristwatch, and Mullah Munir in turn gave it to this fellow, which had a GPS tracker, etc. You might recall that, was it last year, that all those walkie-talkies and mobile phones that, not mobile, walkie-talkies and pagers that the Hamas characters were using suddenly exploded. So Israel is pretty good at this kind of thing. As far as the Mullah is concerned, Mad Mullah Munir, let me make it very clear to you, sir, that he is no friend of Iran. Pakistan is no friend of Iran. You might recall that in January last year, they were lobbing missiles at each other. And then Iran's late President Raisi visited Islamabad. And then it was, oh, darling, darling, sweethearts, we love each other, we love each other. He went back and they started lobbing missiles at each other again. There is absolutely no friendship or affection between the two. Pakistan would be the last Islamic country to want Iran to have a nuclear bomb, because Pakistan's sole claim to fame in the Islamic world, and 57 members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, is that I have on loan some American bombs that I can use. They used to call it the Islamic bomb, you might remember, sir, and then they've stopped doing that. They don't talk about that anymore. Therefore, what the Israelis did was expected. The mullah was called for lunch, not to thank him for planting or giving that wristwatch to the Iranian when they met them soon after Operation Sindoor, but to say that in case we need to use your facilities, if the British are saying we didn't allow the planes to take off from Diego Garcia, then were the planes stationed in in Pakistani air bases, which is why the mullah was summoned and told in case we need to use them, we had used them against the Taliban in Afghanistan, we might need to use them in Iran.
Okay,
and the
so
second,
I had to ask you, yes, finish your thought, sir, finish your thought.
Let me complete, sir. If one of my pilots gets shot down and has to be exfiltrated, then he will come to Pakistan.
Okay, I have to ask you the big question, sir. So the first obvious one is, in the airstrikes of which the Israelis have now released loitering drone footage, which show at least reasonable devastation on face value at one of the sites, do you think that the Iranian nuclear weapons program has indeed been debilitated? Has this been successful?
No question about it. If the bombs have gone there, the program is in the doldrums. It will take a long time for it to recover. It did have a program, despite all the denials that it's all for peaceful purposes. There was one. Why would they bury it 80 meters or 3 stories below the ground in Fordo? You don't bury a civilian nuclear reactor there. They were up to no good, and now I believe justice has come back to haunt.
Okay, does that then engender regime change in Iran, which seems to be the conversation now, that some sort of internal dissension cracks will suddenly pop through?
It takes just one person. I've seen this during my assignments overseas. I've seen this where the Arab Spring started in Tunisia. One guy burns himself in front of the president's palace, and then it becomes a tsunami, sir. I believe that there is going to be internal revolt within Iran. They are not so proud as to say we'll tolerate the mullahs and doesn't matter if they clobber us. They want a government that allows them to get on with the business of living. And I think we will see this internal dissension within Iran. That's what the Israelis and the Americans are hoping for.
Okay, so we have to accept that a global Cold War is taking place and hot zones are representing it, because if you follow the money, Hamas and Hezbollah got the money from either the Qataris, a large amount of it from the Iranians. The Iranians themselves are not rolling around in foreign exchange because of sanctions. They got the money up to the tune of $400 billion from the Chinese in the last 3 or 4 years. The Iranians have been supplying the Russians with missiles and other things in the war in Ukraine. Now, if indeed we are going into a conversation into a pro-West regime change in Iran, then what do the Russians and the Chinese do? What say will they have?
Make a lot of noise. They'll scream, they'll issue statements, they'll do nothing more than that. No one in the Islamic world is going to do anything more than that. Who's going to take on Israel and the United States? Oh, no. The Chinese are not sending their useless PLA to fight on behalf of Iran, and the Russians are too absorbed in Ukraine, sir. This is a red herring that is floated. They are not going to do it. China's aim, whether Iran survives or not, China couldn't care less. They want Taiwan. Whether Iran survives or not, the Russians couldn't care less. They want to fix Ukraine. Period.
Okay, but I have to ask you one more quick question before I get in General Dwivedi. So, if indeed it is true, and it seems true, that because the sequence of events is too tight to ignore, that on 27th of May, Asim Munir shows up, he meets with the Chief of General Staff, he meets with the Iranian Air Force Chief. 2 weeks later, the Chief of General Staff is dead, and 4 days later, Asim Munir is sitting in the White House. So, if indeed it is true that the Iranians who 1 week ago were saying that the Pakistani nuclear weapon is an Islamic bomb that will shield us, have now indeed been told or taught that the Pakistanis were the chief agents running the Trojan horse operation, then where does that put Pakistan? Because the Chinese have been buying the oil from Iran as well. What do the Chinese now see that Pakistani army chief sitting in the White House?
They will understand very clearly that Pakistan's loyalty is to the highest bidder. It was to the Americans during the Taliban regime, it was to the Americans during the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, and it will be to whoever can pay them the most money.
Okay,
they have been promised a lot of things. That's what it is, sir.
Okay.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.